Hello, everybody. This is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and it's Monday. So happy Monday. We're back with another one of our 5-minute histories. And today we're just going to jump right in, and I'm going to try to keep it as close to 5 minutes as I can. And we're going to talk about the Peabody Institute and the Peabody Library. And let's start with George Peabody. If you were standing in London in the financial district at the Royal Exchange, you would see a statue of Peabody, and you would think that's the great American banker who also basically was the father of affordable housing in London. And if you're standing in Mount Vernon Place in Baltimore, you see the same statue, a copy of the one that was built in London, and you say that's the great Baltimorean who gave us the Peabody Institute. And you would both be right, of course. Peabody was born in 1795 in a place called South Danvers, Massachusetts. Came to Baltimore as a teenager, fought in the War of 1812, defending the city from the British, and then set up a wholesale dry goods business and quietly did very, very well, importing and exporting from London. In the 1830s, he moves to London, realizing that's the world's financial capital. And he does an important thing for the young United States as he becomes essentially America's banker in London, help connecting capital with projects in America that need it desperately, including states that are issuing bonds. And Peabody does very well being the broker for state bond issuances, except for one time in the 1840s, apparently Maryland decided that we were not going to pay the interest anymore on our bonds to those London bankers. And Peabody was blackballed from a number of social clubs for his role with that. But he made things right. He got Maryland to start paying our interest again, including, incidentally, by more or less bribing the orator, Daniel Webster, to go around and say how great it was for states to pay their interest back to London banks. Peabody sees in London all of these cultural and educational opportunities that aren't in Baltimore. And in the 1850s, he gives over what would eventually amount to $1.4 million to build the Peabody Institute. And the Institute, the first building, is the one on the corner of Charles and Monument Streets. It has a delay, it gets started, but has a delay because of the Civil War, and eventually is completed in 1866. And Peabody comes back from London for that dedication. The Institute was not just a music school. It included a music school, but it included public lectures. There was a Smithsonian professor, a Smithsonian doctor, who came and gave talks on 21 different subjects, I guess a Renaissance man of his day. But it had science, and it had art, and it had higher learning. Its library contained books on British art and geography and cartography, so really broad expanse. He even gave prizes, cash prizes, to the top students at Baltimore City College, the all-boys high school, and to the top students at Western High School and Eastern High School, both of which were all female. So the Peabody Library, of course, is just magnificent, called one of the world's most beautiful libraries, or a cathedral of books, built all of cast iron, 5 tiers, balconies of cast iron, up to a wonderful skylight. And of course, cast iron is gorgeous, but it's also practical. If you're a librarian, one of the things you fear the most is fire. And having cast iron everywhere instead of wood really cuts down on that risk. The other thing you fear if you're a librarian is water. And I'll share a story that ends up okay, but starts out really pretty tragically. In the 1960s, the Peabody had become part of the Pratt Library System. And by the 1980s, it had become part of Johns Hopkins University, their rare book library. And one morning, about 20 years ago, a librarian comes in and unlocks the door and sees what amounts to a waterfall cascading over the left side of the library stacks. Apparently, a contractor had been working on the air conditioning unit on the roof and maybe knocked a hose open and then didn't realize it, and everybody went away for the weekend. And when this librarian came in on Monday, it was a waterfall. And apparently, if you're a rare book librarian, you either have memorized or you have a little card in your pocket somewhere with a phone number, a 212 phone number, area code 212. And that's a gentleman in New York. And in this case, he comes screaming down I-95 in what amounts to a big freezer truck. And apparently, if you have rare books that get sopping wet, you put them in the freezer, and then you thaw them slowly under an evaporation tube so that all of the water moisture gets sucked out. And miraculously, out of the thousands of books that got wet that day, Apparently all of them survived, including being able to flip through all the pages, except for one really rare book with a tan sheepskin or lambskin cover. The cover apparently got discolored, but that was the only damage from that crazy incident. Let me wrap up by saying a few things about Peabody and then about his philanthropy. One of the things, if in addition to affordable housing in London, there still is a Peabody Trust that provides tens of thousands of affordable housing units to Londoners to this day. Back in the United States, in addition to the Peabody Institute, of course, he gave money to found museums at Harvard and Yale. He gave money to found a school at Vanderbilt. He gave money for buildings at the University of Mississippi, the University of Georgia, the University of Arkansas. Really wonderful philanthropy. When he died in London in the 1860s, the Queen Victoria, allowed him to essentially have a rest in state at Westminster. I believe that was maybe the first American to get that honor. And before that, the city of London had made him a free man, basically giving him the keys to the city. And he got a Congressional Medal of Honor. And most recently, in the early 2000s, to sort of acknowledge his Medal of Honor back 150 years ago, Google gave him a Google Doodle. So there's his highest award. I'm going to close with one story that when he came back in 1866 to dedicate the Institute, he made sure to have dinner with two of his younger colleagues, Johns Hopkins and Enoch Pratt. And over dinner, which was held at his friend Robert Garrett's mansion on Mount Vernon Place, the one that's no longer there. There's a hotel there where his house was. But at that dinner, he apparently said, Robert, serve us your finest food and your best wines, and then lock the door because I'm going to convince Hopkins and Pratt to give away their fortunes as I am doing. And of course, that led to Hopkins giving away his fortune for the hospital and university, and Pratt, of course, founding the library system as well as Shepherd Pratt Mental Health Institute. And so in many ways, next time you go to the Peabody or you just want to go to Mount Vernon Place, say thank you to this extraordinary man who, among other things, is also known as the father of American philanthropy. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.